Across the whole countryside, the Lucas farm was called the Manor. No one knew why. The people who lived nearby thought the word manor meant it was rich and fancy. This farm was the biggest, richest, and best in the whole area. The large yard was surrounded by 5 rows of big, beautiful trees. These trees protected the delicate apple trees from the strong wind. Inside the yard, there were long brick buildings for storing food for animals and grain. There were also beautiful stables made of hard stone that could hold 30 horses. The red brick house looked like a small castle. Because of the good care taken, even the piles of manure didn't smell too bad. The guard dogs lived in kennels, and many chickens and ducks walked through the tall grass. Every day at noon, 15 people, masters, farm workers, and women, sat around a long kitchen table. The soup was served hot in a large bowl with blue flowers on it. The animals, horses, cows, pigs, and sheep were fat, well-fed, and clean. Maitre Lucas, a tall man who was getting a little fat, would walk around 3 times a day, watching over everything and making sure everything was done right. There was a very old white horse that the mistress wanted to keep until it died naturally. She had raised it, always used it, and it reminded her of happy times. This horse stayed in a special place at the end of the stable because of her kindness. A young boy, about 15 years old, named Isidore Duval but called Zidore, took care of this old horse. He gave it oats and hay in winter, and in summer, he had to move it to different places in the pasture 4 times a day so the horse could eat fresh grass. The horse was almost too weak to walk. It lifted its legs slowly, and the knees were big and swollen. Its coat, which was no longer brushed, looked like white hair, and its long eyelashes made its eyes look sad. When Zidore took the horse to the pasture, he had to pull the rope very hard because the horse walked so slowly. The boy, bent over and out of breath, would get very angry and say bad words because he didn't like taking care of the old horse. The other workers on the farm saw how angry Zidore was with the horse, and they found it funny. They would often talk about the horse, named Coco, just to make Zidore more upset. His friends would tease him. In the village, they even called him Coco Zidore. The boy would get mad, feeling a strong desire to hurt the horse. He was a thin, long-legged, dirty child with thick, rough, red hair. He didn't seem very smart and often stuttered like he couldn't think clearly. For a long time, Zidore couldn't understand why Coco was still kept on the farm. He was angry because he thought things were being wasted on this useless horse. Since the horse couldn't work anymore, it didn't make sense to him that it was still being fed. He didn't like the idea of wasting expensive oats on this old, weak horse. Often, even though Maitre Lucas told him to feed the horse properly, Zidore would only give Coco half of the food. In his confused, childish mind, he started to hate the horse more and more. He was a mean, angry, and cruel boy. When summer came, Zidor had to move the horse to different parts of the pasture. It was a long walk. Every morning, he would start out angry, dragging his feet across the wheat fields. The men working in the fields would call out to him, jokingly, "Hey, Zidor, say hello to Coco for me." He wouldn't answer, but on the way, he would break off a small stick. After moving the old horse, he would let it start eating the grass. Then, sneaking up behind it, he would hit the horse's legs with the stick. The horse would try to run away, kick, or get away from the hits, running around in a circle like it was trapped in a circus ring. Zidor would keep hitting the horse angrily, running behind it with his teeth clenched in rage. Then he would slowly walk away without looking back, while the horse watched him leave. The horse's ribs stuck out, and it breathed hard from the effort. Only when the boy's blue shirt was out of sight would the horse lower its thin white head to the grass. Since the nights were now warm, Coco was allowed to sleep outside, in the field behind the small woods. Only Zidor went to see him. The boy threw stones at Coco for fun. He would sit down on a small hill about 10 feet away and stay there for about half an hour. From time to time, he would throw a sharp stone at the old horse. Coco, who was tied up, would just stand there, watching the boy and not daring to eat until Zidor was gone. One thought kept coming to the boy's mind. Why feed this horse that isn't good for anything anymore? He thought that the old horse was stealing food from the other animals and even from him, Zidor, who worked hard. Then, little by little, each day, Zidor began to make the rope shorter, so the horse couldn't reach much grass. The hungry horse was getting thinner and starving. Too weak to break free, Coco would stretch his head toward the tall, green, tasty grass. The grass was so close he could smell it, but it was too far for him to reach. But one morning, Zidor had an idea. He decided not to move Coco anymore. He was tired of walking so far for that old, bony horse. He still went to see him, though, just to enjoy being mean. The horse watched Zidor anxiously. That day, Zidor did not hit him. He walked around him with his hands in his pockets. He even pretended to change Coco's spot, but he put the stake back in the same hole and walked away, happy with his trick. The horse, seeing him leave, neighed to call him back, but the boy started to run, leaving Coco all alone in the field. He was tied down and couldn't reach any grass. Starving, Coco tried to reach the grass he could almost touch with his nose. He got on his knees, stretching his neck and his long, drooling lips. But it was all in vain. The old horse spent the whole day trying, but it didn't work. Seeing all that green grass around him only made his hunger worse. Zidor didn't come back that day. Instead, he wandered through the woods looking for bird nests. The next day, Zidor came back. Coco, exhausted, was lying down. When he saw Zidor, he struggled to get up, hoping the boy would finally change his spot. But the young boy didn't even touch the hammer that was lying on the ground. He came closer, looked at the horse, and threw a clump of dirt at its head, which flattened out against the white hair. Then he started walking away, whistling. The horse stood still as long as he could see the boy. Then, knowing he couldn't reach the grass, he lay down on his side and closed his eyes again. The next day, Zidor didn't come. When he finally came back, he found Coco still lying down. He saw that the horse was dead. Zidor stood there, looking at Coco, feeling pleased with what he had done. He was surprised that it was all over so soon. He touched the horse with his foot, lifted one of Coco's legs, and then let it drop. He sat on the horse and stared at the grass, thinking about nothing. He went back to the farm but didn't tell anyone about what had happened because he wanted to wander around during the time he used to spend moving the horse to new grass. The next day, he went to see Coco again. When Zidor came near, some crows flew away. There were lots of flies on the horse's body, and they were buzzing around it. When Zidor got back home, he finally told everyone what had happened. But the horse was so old that nobody was surprised. The master told two of the workers, "Take your shovels and dig a hole right where he is." The men buried the horse in the place where he had died of hunger. And soon, the grass there grew thick, green, and strong, fed by the poor horse's body.